Well, for more on Silicon Valley's tech giants and corporate social responsibility, I'm joined by Josh Constine live from San Francisco. He's a technology journalist and an editor-at-large with TechCrunch. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you for having me.
So give us some background. How did the housing situation in Silicon Valley evolve to this point, and who are the big winners and losers in this type of market?
The tech giants didn't cause the housing crisis in Northern California, but they have exacerbated it. For years, residents have tried to block housing because their land, their homes, stand to rise in price as demand increases, but there's no added supply. But when the tech companies moved in, they brought thousands and thousands of employees to the Bay Area, and many of them want to live right in the heart of San Francisco since they can actually afford it. But the result is that it's so hard for anyone without a tech job to afford to live here. And a lot of these companies haven't done much to help their hyper-local community. They've done lots of philanthropy abroad, but not much right in their backyard.
So then as we look locally, we see Google's plan for this affordable housing. They said $1 billion over 10 years. Now, this does seem to be more of an investment than a charitable effort, though.
This is philanthropy. They're trying to pledge some of this money to go towards affordable housing efforts because oftentimes, even when housing gets built, it's all built for these tech workers who are already affluent, and there's no place for teachers or police officers, people that really need to be part of the local community. So I do see this as a big step forward for Google and something that other tech companies should see as a role model.
Now, this is happening over a 10-year period, and Google says, obviously, it's going to continue to grow over that time. So is what they're doing enough to address the problem? What else needs to be done?
Unfortunately, Google and all these other tech giants are growing so fast that even when they do fund housing efforts, they don't fully offset the extra employees that they're bringing to the area. But at least they're making a dent in the problem. Meanwhile, politicians have failed repeatedly to get any legislation through to increase housing, and that's because greedy homeowners are blocking those legislations because they want their housing prices to rise so they can sell their home for more money later, but they pretend like the reason is that they don't want more shade or too tall of buildings ruining the skyline, when really they just want to line their own pocket.
So as you mentioned, it wasn't actually the tech companies that created this problem. All of these homeowners just want to hold on to their property. So should it really be the tech firms' priority to help solve this housing crisis or the social issues, as opposed to, say, governments who entice these big companies with these big tax breaks?
The government should actually be doing much more on this effort. But unfortunately, in the Bay Area, every city has its own government, and they're all hoping to keep housing out while bringing tax dollars in. They want office workers, but they just don't want to have to build any of that housing. But yes, I do think that these tech companies have a huge responsibility because when they bring so many rich people into the area, it not only increases housing prices, but the cost of a cup of coffee, even the bus rates go up, and they're causing tons of congestion on the roadways, which leads to infrastructure costs and makes all those people with service jobs or more low-level jobs late to their work. And so these companies have to start investing not just in malaria nets abroad or internet accessibility efforts in India, but right here in the Bay Area to change the problem that they're making worse.
And it's been quite the turnaround because Silicon Valley tech startups used to be seen as scrappy up-and-comers, but now they've reached these huge levels of success. They seem to have this image problem about not caring about the average worker, equality, human rights issues, some even comparing them to these sort of vilified stereotypes of Wall Street bankers. Is that fair?
Well, really, this is a symptom of capitalism's trouble. We don't have any way of rewarding companies for doing what's right. We just reward them for making more money. And so many of these companies, like Facebook and Google, have prioritized growth year after year rather than investing in protections for society or better treatment for their workers.
Now, we know that regulators are keeping an increasing eye now on these big tech companies, but what are the economic consequences of these big firms just not improving their image and not really listening to some of the needs of the local communities?
Well, in reality, most of these companies, their stock price continues to grow, they continue to earn more profits, so it may not necessarily influence their business if they ignore the concerns of the public around them. We find time and time again that the media narrative is so much hate and scrutiny of these tech companies, but average users aren't stopping using Gmail or Facebook just because they don't like how the company acts. But that doesn't mean that these companies shouldn't act better, because as they grow larger than even some governments, controlling the lives of billions of people through their products, they also have a responsibility to give back to those people and make sure they're not making the world a worse place.
Indeed. Thank you so much. Josh Constine there, technology journalist and editor-at-large with TechCrunch.